sayang. While the parents are working, while the stress is tough, just remember the following. Go for a daily dose of nutrition. Go for a balanced meal with variation. Go for a run or two of exercise. Aim for healthy lifestyles. Inspire others to do the same. Story of life is no game. Life doesn't need to end that fast. If you choose health, the longer you last. Go for a daily dose of nutrition. Go for a balanced meal with variation. Go for a run or two of exercise. Aim for healthy lifestyles. Go for a daily dose of nutrition. Go for a balanced meal with variation. Go for a run or two of exercise. Aim for healthy lifestyle. Live longer, happier, better with FNRI.
Halina kayo, kain na tayo ng brown rice. Masarap na mas masustansya pa kesa white rice. Vitamin at mineral, seksay pa rin, pampalusog ng katawan ng bata't matanda. Para sa ating lahat, ang brown rice. Calcium,
Papatibay ng buto para sa healthiness.
nayasin sa panunaw na maayos. Magnesium, taga-ayos ng katawan mo. Halina kayo, kain na tayo ng brown rice. Masarap na mas masustansya pa kesa white rice. Vitamin at mineral, seksay pa rin, pampalusog ng katawan ng bata't matanda. Para sa ating lahat, ang brown rice. Sagot sa malnutrition, iwas cancer, diabetes at sakit sa puso. Konting kain lang, mabubusog ka na. Halina, tulungan ang bayan. Halina, mag-brown rice na. Mag-brown rice na. Pinoy, Pinoy. Hanggang Pinoy.
Alam mo na ba na may bagong gabay para sa lakas at kalusugan mo? Simple-simple lang at madaling tanda. Ang tawag dito'y pinggang Pinoy. Gulay at prutas, 1/2 ng plato. Kanin o tinapay, 1/3 ng plato mo. Isda o karne, 1/6 ng plato. Sukat na sukat, bawat pangkat ng pagkain. Pagkaing balanse sa nakatatanda, mainam din sa bata.
Pinggang Pinoy,
Gulay at prutas, manhak ng plato.
Pinggang Pinoy,
Kanin o tinapay, 1/3 ng plato mo.
Pinggang Pinoy,
Isda o karne, 1/6 ng plato mo.
Pinggang Pinoy,
Pinggang Pinoy.
Ito ang bago, Enhanced Nutriban with Carrots. Try nyo! Dahil Enhanced Nutriban, healthy rin to. Sisip ito sa vitamina at minerals tulad ng vitamina A, iron, calcium, potassium at zinc, bukod sa enerhiya at proteinang dulot nito. Higit sa lahat, ito ay zero trans fat and no cholesterol. At meron pa rin milky taste na tiyak magugustuhan ng buong pamilya.
Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Kumusta po kayo? I hope you are well wherever you are. Good morning. Again, before we start, let me acknowledge the presence of Dr. Imelda Angeles Agdepa, FNRI Director and Scientist too. Also to Dr. Rodolfo Florentino, former FNRI Director, Ms. Zenaida Velasco, and DAP President, Miss Joy Ramos Benviaje, PRC Board of Nutrition and Dietetics, Miss Arlene Riario, NNC Regional Nutrition Program Coordinator for Region 5, Reverend Father Leonardo Dulyentas, FNRI Ethics Committee Member. Good morning po, sir and ma'am. So welcome to day 4. Also like to welcome, ilan na ba tayo ngayon? We're
Good morning,
actually
Mark.
564 participants tuning in our Zoom and more than 50 sa ating YouTube. So welcome to day 4 of the DOST-FNRI's 47th seminar series on food and nutrition, researches and S&T services
Sige, okay.
activities virtual edition with the theme Good Nutrition in the First 1,000 Days. Now, starting right is the right start. So we hope that you have learned a lot from our previous plenary as well as technical sessions since day 1. So again, I am Mark Pretzel P. Sumaraga, and I am very honored to be your moderator for this session, Technical Session 5, Nutrition and Aging. So before we start, allow me to share some important reminders. Okay, so this technical session is simulcast live via DOST-FNRI official YouTube channel. So hello sa mga YouTube viewers. And there's also a link where we can register. However, as of the moment, the registration is closed as we have reached the maximum capacity for the convention. Right? So please make sure to log in for this technical session. Please click the link in the chat box. So this is needed for your PRC CPD units. So after the session, you have to answer the post test at the FSS website. So the post test link will serve as your logout for this technical session. Failure to answer the post test will mean that you did not log out for this technical session. Failure to provide the correct FSS technical session code will mean that you did not answer the post test. Hence, you will not receive certificate for the session. And for the post test, you will be asked to input an FSS technical session code, right? So the FSS technical session code will be announced at the end of this session. So tune in up to the end of session 5. Only registered participants will be given certificates for the FS47 DOST FNRI seminar series. So this will only be available once you have completed the post tests as well as submitted your feedback evaluation forms, right? So again, please feel free to ask questions. So we encourage you to key in your questions in the Q&A box found below your screens. So our panelists will address selected questions during the open forum. However, in the interest of time, we may not be able to answer all of your questions, right? So again, good morning everybody. Sana ready po tayo for this session. Welcome to session 5, which is titled Nutrition and Aging. So the World Health Organization, or WHO, declared the year 2020 up to 2030 as the decade of healthy aging. So to bring together governments, civil society, international agencies, professionals, academia, the media, and the private sector for concerted, catalytic, and collaborative action to improve the lives of older people, their families, and the communities in which they live. Technical Session 5 will capitalize on cutting-edge research on the nutrition and health of the world's fastest growing age group, the older adults. 'Di ba? Lahat naman po tayo ay tumatanda. Okay? So this session will tackle the recent science-informed efforts on adult obesity and hypercholesterolemia. It also aims to offer a glimpse on the timely and relevant issue of food insecurity and how it shapes the nutritional status of the older adult population. So factoring in the interrelationship between genetics, economics, and food insecurity, this session encourages a systems-based approach towards interventions and systems to uphold active and healthy aging. So guests and audience of this session, let us all welcome our panelists, speakers for this morning. Let's start with Miss Marietta P. Rodriguez, our first speaker. So Miss Marietta P. Rodriguez is Senior Science Research Specialist of the Nutritional Genomics Unit, Nutritional Biochemistry Section of the Nutrition and Food R&D Division. Ms. Rodriguez is the principal investigator of various nutritional genomics researches of the Institute aimed to determine the relationship of diet, your DNA, or your genes for a more effective dietary management of non-communicable diseases. She is recipient of various local awards, including International Publication Award given by the National Academy of Science and Technology. Ms. Rodriguez has authored and co-authored numerous peer-reviewed local and international publications. So friends and guests, this morning, Ms. Rodriguez will present her team's latest work on Nutrigenomics, titled Risk Score Predictors and Algorithms, a study on the SNPs or single nucleotide polymorphism and traits related to obesity among respondents of the 2013 National Nutrition Survey. Good morning po, Mamayet Rodriguez. And then for our second speaker, let's welcome Ms. Chona Fernandez Patalen. So Ms. Chona Fernandez Patalen is Senior Science Research Specialist of the Nutritional Assessment and Monitoring Division. So Ms. Patalen leads the clinical and health component of the National Nutrition Survey, where she has helped determine the prevalence rates of major risk factors to non-communicable diseases or NCDs of the entire country. Ms. Patalen is an experienced resource speaker and has been invited to several local and international fora. She has also received numerous awards and recognition for her contributions in the field of food and public health nutrition. Ms. Patalen is sharing with us her study titled Association Between Socioeconomic Status, Selected NCD Risk Factors, and the Prevalence and Treatment of Hypercholesterolemia among Filipino adults. And for our third panelist is Ms. Glenda P. Azania. So Ms. Glenda P. Azania is Science Research Specialist 2 of the Nutritional Assessment and Monitoring Division. Ms. Azania is a registered nutritionist dietitian and has been involved in various nutrition intervention and evaluation programs, as well as in the conduct of national nutrition surveys. Her works have been published in several peer-reviewed local and international journals. For her latest work, Ms. Azania will share with us a very important nutritional issue affecting older adults or the elderly. So her talk is titled, Is Household Insecurity Associated with Chronic Energy Deficiency Among Filipino Elderly? So again, Welcome po sa ating tatlong panelists for this morning. Good morning po, Miss Rodriguez, Miss Patalen, and Miss Azania. So without further ado, let us all welcome our first speaker for technical session 5, Miss Rodriguez.
Good morning, everyone. I am Marieta P. Rodriguez, and I'd like to thank you for joining us in this session on nutrition and aging. It's indeed a great pleasure for me to share with you one of our researches here at DOST-FNRI. I will be presenting our research on risk score predictors and algorithms, a study on the single nucleotide polymorphisms and traits related to obesity among respondents of 2013 National Nutrition Survey. With me in this study are Jacos Nasis, Mark Pretzel Sumaraga, Diana Glades Dumalanta, Frances Isabel Hakalan, Joven Hayagan, and Krishna Burhal from the Nutritional Biochemistry section of the Nutrition and Food Research and Development Division. For the declaration of conflict of interest, the authors declared that they have no known competing financial interests or personal relationships that could have appeared to influence the work of this presentation. Before I proceed with my presentation, let me give you some operational definition of some terms that you will hear in the course of my report. The first word is genome. This is a complete set of human genetic information that contains the instructions for the development of humans' health and physical well-being. Gene serve as the instruction manual that dictates the expression of physical stuff like the color of the hair or how the food is metabolized in the body. DNA, or the deoxyribonucleic acid, these are strands found inside the chromosome that consist of nucleotides in different combinations, abbreviated as the A, C, T, and G. The nucleotides, these are the so-called building blocks of life. Single nucleotide polymorphisms, these are the most common type of genetic variation in a particular gene, characterized as a change in a single base of nucleotide. Genotype, these are two alleles inherited or acquired by chance for a particular gene. Alleles, these are one or two or more alternative forms of a gene that arise by mutation and are found at the same place at a chromosome. It may be inherited or it can be de novo. Just to give you a short background, let me share with you some facts about obesity as a global epidemic. Obesity is a multifactorial disease characterized by an excess body fat. The worldwide obesity prevalence has gone triple since 1975 and continues to pose serious, debilitating clinical conditions. Recent estimates by the World Health Organization showed that 13% of adults in the world are obese and 39% are overweight, of which 39% of the overweight are men and 40% are women. Obesity is one of the leading risk factors for early deaths and was linked to 4.7 million premature deaths each year, making it as one of the world's largest health problems, not only in rich countries, but to one that spans all income levels. 8% of the global deaths are the result of obesity. In the Philippines, the prevalence of overweight and obesity continuously increases from 1993 to 2019, as you can see in this slide. There was an increase in the prevalence rate of 31.1% for 2015 to 36.6% prevalence in the combined data for 2018 and 2019. It was also reported that there was an increasing trend in the prevalence of overweight and obesity among adults 20 years old and over by sex. More females, or 41.1%, were overweight and obese compared to the male counterpart, which is 31.5%. The prevalence of overweight and obesity among adults 20 years and over is 36.6%. So, what causes overweight and obesity? The fundamental cause of overweight and obesity is energy imbalance between calories consumed and calories expended, meaning there were more food intake but less energy expenditure. There are also increased intake of energy-dense foods that are high in fat and sugars, and increase in physical inactivity due to increasingly sedentary nature of many forms of work, changing modes of transportation, and increasing urbanization. The objective of this study is to develop an obesity risk predictor using anthropometry, biochemical, clinical and health data, dietary intake, and genetics information using the 2030 National Nutrition Survey data. For the methodology, the study used a cross-sectional study design utilizing secondary data from the 2030 National Nutrition Survey. This involved 870 adult male and female participants from the National Capital Region. With complete information on anthropometric measurements, biochemical, clinical and health data, dietary intake, and genetic information. The data were analyzed using multinomial logistic regression. For the validation of generated model predictor, a different set of 159 participants from the 2013 NNS ages 20 years and over were analyzed. For the results, the prevalence of overweight and obesity among 20 years and over were presented in this slide. 63.75% and 55.26% among the female participants are overweight and obese respectively, compared to the 36.25% and 44.74% of the male counterpart. Logistic regression analysis of overweight and obesity and anthropometric indicators showed a significant result at 0.01 level of significance. The waist-hip measurements and the waist-hip ratio showed highly significant association of being obese. Significant results were likewise obtained for the regression analysis of overweight and obesity and different biochemical indicators. The elevated FBS, borderline high cholesterol, and high cholesterol levels have higher risk of being overweight and obese than those with normal FBS and desirable cholesterol levels. Those with borderline high triglycerides levels have the highest risk of being obese compared to those with desirable triglyceride levels, though no significant association was seen with very high triglycerides levels. When it comes to low HDL, the risk is 2.4 times higher than those with a desirable HDL. For the LDL and VLDL levels, the risk of being obese is 1.64 and 2 times higher for those with borderline high LDL and above normal VLDL. The highest, most commonly consumed food of the participants from the National Capital Region per group is the cereals and cereal products, and this is followed by the rice and rice products. The fish, meat, and poultry rank third in the top 10, while the vegetable group is on the 7th rank. From the 870 DNA samples subjected for targeted next-generation sequencing, 14 obesity-related genes and 18 gene variants were generated and identified. Among the 14 obesity-related gene and gene variants, GSR was identified to have a significant association with obesity. The allele frequencies of the 14 generated genes and gene variants were found among the participants and were presented by BMI classification. We then compared the allele frequencies of these genes and gene variants found among Filipino adults with the global East Asia, South Asia minor allele frequencies. This slide shows the comparison of allele frequencies of genes and gene variants for obesity as reported from the global minor allele frequency, East Asia, South Asia, and the NCR minor allele frequency. 8 out of the 18 genotypes presented here showed higher allele frequencies compared to the global frequency. The minor allele frequency found in ROBO1 genes, or the roundabout guidance receptor 1, is a protein coding gene. The product of this gene is a member of the immunoglobulin gene superfamily and encodes an integral membrane protein that functions in axon guidance and neuronal precursor cell migration. The allele frequency found in Filipino adults is higher than the global minor allele frequency. Same is true with the comparison of allele frequencies of gene and gene variant of the GHSR, or the growth hormone secretagogue receptor, also known as the ghrelin receptor. It is a G protein coupled receptor that binds growth hormone secretagogues such as ghrelin and called as the hunger hormone. The role of GHSR is thought to be in regulating energy homeostasis and body weight. The allele frequency of this genotype found among the participants from NCR were observed to be higher among Filipinos than the overall reported frequency in the global population. Moreover, the CC risk genotype was found significant predictor for overweight and obesity. The risk of being overweight and obese were identified with age, sex, HDL, VLDL, and RS490683 genotype. These predictors showed highly significant association to the probability of being obese. The risk of being obese for the female is twice higher than the male counterpart. For those belonging to the 40 years old, the risk of being obese is more likely 10%, and those belonging to the age group 50 to 59 years old, the risk of being overweight and obese is almost 3 times compared to those in other age group. The risk of being overweight and obese is almost 3 times if you possess the CC risk genotype. Well, in summary, the risk of being overweight and obese is almost 3 times if you possess the CC genotype in the RS490683 of the GHSR or the hunger gene. And sex, age group, belonging to the 40 to 49 years old and 50 to 59 years old, low HDL and above normal VLDL were identified predictors of overweight and obesity. So for our conclusion and recommendation, the predictors found to have association with overweight and obesity were sex, age, HDL, VLDL, RS490683, and the use of prediction algorithm to identify at-risk individuals may help institute early preventive measures against obesity. However, it is recommended that further external validation to optimize and to gather more evidences of prediction efficiency across all possible parameters is recommended. That ends my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Miss Rodriguez, for that very informative topic. So we are really pleased that DOST-FNRI has finally found a platform where we can integrate genetics, our DNA, our dietary intake, as well as the disease. That is the field of nutrigenomics or nutritional genomics. So guys and friends watching us, so remember your hunger genes, all right? So before we move on to our second speaker, let us we are very grateful for the presence of Assistant Secretary Diana L. Ignacio. Good morning po, ma'am. And Assistant Secretary Maridon O. Sahagun. Also, for the presence of our former FNRI Director, Dr. Mario V. Capansana. Good morning po, sir. Dr. Maria Teresa Talavera from the UPLB Institute of Human Nutrition and Food. Also to our former chief and scientist, hello ma'am, I hope you are well there, Dr. Celeste C. Tanchoco, and Mr. Red De Silva, FNRI Ethics Committee member. Thank you also for the presence of Ms. Maria Teresa Ungson, of NNC Regional Nutrition Program Coordinator for Region 11. And finally, and last but not the least, our Deputy Director is also here. Good morning po, Dr. Anthony Calibo. Okay, for our second speaker, to talk about hypercholesterolemia, may we welcome Ma'am Chona Patalen. Over to you, Ma'am Patalen.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Mark, for the generous introduction. It is my pleasure to share with you the results of our completed study entitled Association between Socioeconomic Status, Selected NCD Risk Factors, and the Prevalence and Treatment of Hypercholesterolemia among Filipino adults. So the members of the study team are yours truly, Maria Stephanie Parani, Carla Denise Inso, Apple Joy Ducay, and Ms. Charmaine Duante. So all of us are from the Nutritional Assessment and Monitoring Division of DOST-FNRI. For our disclosure, all authors declare that we have no competing interests or personal relationships that could have appeared to influence the information or data reported in this study and in this technical session. So for the background, According to the World Health Organization, in the recent key facts on CVDs published last month, cardiovascular diseases or CVDs are the #1 cause of death globally, taking an estimated 17.9 million lives in 2019. So CVDs refer to any diseases of the heart and blood vessels and include coronary heart disease, cerebrovascular disease, peripheral arterial disease, and other conditions. And 4 out of 5 CVD deaths, or 85%, are due to heart attack and stroke. Moreover, more than 3/4 of CVD deaths happen in low and middle income countries. And Philippines is a middle income country that has been experiencing this growing epidemic for decades. For the risk factors contributing to the development of CVDs, cardiometabolic, behavioral, environmental, and social risk factors are the major drivers of these diseases. So some of these risk factors highlighted in the slide were collected as part of the National Nutrition Survey, or NNS. So these are on elevated blood pressure, high fasting blood sugar, high total cholesterol, and overweight and obesity for the biological risk factors. And for the behavioral risk factors, this include smoking or tobacco use, harmful use of alcohol or binge drinking, physical inactivity, and unhealthy diet or the dietary risk factors. And we also need to consider the non-modifiable risk factors as shown in this slide. In the Philippines, the leading cause of death for the past 10 years is ischemic heart disease. So this is also called coronary heart disease or coronary artery disease, which is a term given to heart problems caused by narrowed arteries or blockage of the blood vessels that supply blood and oxygen to the heart muscle. So if this is left untreated, ischemic heart disease may lead to severe heart damage and which can ultimately lead to heart attack. And here are the trends for the number of registered deaths in the Philippines, specifically caused by diseases of the circulatory system. So this is from 2015 to 2020. So in the recent report of the Philippine Statistics Authority, ischemic heart disease was shown to be the leading cause of death in the Philippines since 2015. The trend is actually alarmingly increasing, and in 2020, with 99.7 thousand deaths, this disease actually accounts for 17.3% of the total deaths in the country. While cerebrovascular disease, this is the purple line, which includes stroke and aneurysm, came in second. So the main underlying cause of CVDs is atherosclerosis. And one of the most important prominent risk factors for developing atherosclerosis is hypercholesterolemia. So this means there is high level of cholesterol in the blood, which causes plaque, plaque formation within blood vessels that can lead to severe atherosclerosis and can cause ischemic heart disease. Hypercholesterolemia usually results from a diet rich in saturated fats and high in cholesterol, with a lower amount of fiber and coupled with physical inactivity. So in the Philippines, the trends in the prevalence of high total cholesterol and high triglycerides among adults 20 years old and above is presented in this graph. In the 2013 National Nutrition Survey conducted by DOST-FNRI, the prevalence of high total cholesterol increased alarmingly from 4% in 1998 to 18.6% in 2013. And for high triglyceride, this is the orange line. This also increased from 9.4% in 2003 to 20.5% in 2013. By sex, the prevalence of high total cholesterol was significantly higher among female adults at 21.5%. And then the mean total cholesterol level was 201 0.8 milligram per deciliter. And this was already classified as borderline high. And then by sex, the mean for females was significantly higher compared to males. By place of residence, there were significantly more adults from urban areas who had high total cholesterol. And by wealth status, it is very evident in this slide that socioeconomic condition plays a major role in the overall health and nutritional status of an individual. So the prevalence increased with wealth quintile, and it was highest among adults in the richest wealth quintile, where about a quarter of adults in this group had high total cholesterol. So in this study, we aim to determine the prevalence of hypercholesterolemia and its treatment status among Filipino adults aged 20 years and above, and to identify the association between hypercholesterolemia and the socioeconomic factors, particularly wealth status, educational attainment, occupation, and civil status. And lastly, we aim to determine the association between selected NCD risk factors and the prevalence and treatment of hypercholesterolemia among Filipino adults. For the methodology, this study utilized the data collected in the 2013 National Nutrition Survey. So this is the 8 NNS we conducted and the latest data set that we have for lipid profile. The NNS utilized the 2003 master sample of the Philippine Statistics Authority to generate national level estimates for the different health and nutrition indicators. And for the study population, from the 2013 NNS dataset of Filipino adults, 20 years old and above, there were around 19,000 who had data on lipid profile, while those adults with complete information needed for the study was 16,274. So the study population is comprised of adults with complete data on lipid profile, fasting blood sugar, blood pressure measurement, anthropometric measurements, and information on the behavioral risk factors. For the different data collection methods conducted in the NNS, for the anthropometric measurements, weight and height were measured to determine body mass index for the assessment of nutritional status, as well as waist and hip circumferences for the assessment of central or abdominal obesity. Blood pressure measurement is also done, and then blood collection was performed by our medical technologists to determine fasting blood sugar and lipid profile. And for the face-to-face interview, this was conducted to collect information on socioeconomic characteristics and different risk factors for NCDs. So these are on smoking, alcohol drinking, physical activity, and we had 24-hour food recall for the consumption. So our trained and licensed medical technologists or the biochemical researchers extracted blood from sampled respondents who have fasted for at least 10 to 12 hours. Blood samples were collected via venipuncture, and these are processed, packed, and shipped to FNRI for analysis in our laboratories. So in the analysis of the lipid profile, we use the following cutoff points for total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, HDL cholesterol, and serum triglycerides from the National Cholesterol Education Program or NCEP expert panel on detection, evaluation, and treatment of high blood cholesterol in adults, or this is called Adult Treatment Panel 3. So our target for healthy lipids should be less than 200 milligrams per DL for total cholesterol, less than 100 milligrams per DL for LDL cholesterol, so this is the bad cholesterol, 60 milligram per DL or more for HDL cholesterol, and then less than 150 milligram per deciliter for triglycerides. So we use data version 16 in our statistical analysis, and descriptive statistics of the study population was determined, and logistic regression analysis were also done to assess the association between the study variables. So for the results of the study, Let me first present the prevalence of hypercholesterolemia and the prevalence of untreated hypercholesterolemia among Filipino adults. So our results show that the prevalence of hypercholesterolemia based on the cholesterol level of 240 milligram per deciliter or more, or intake of lipid-lowering medications such as statins among adults was 19.3%. And it was significantly higher among females at 22.1% than males at 16%. And majority of these adults with high total cholesterol were also untreated. So 17.8% were considered untreated hypercholesterolemia. So this means those who are not receiving or taking lipid-lowering medications, but with high total cholesterol level. So this was 20.3% in women and 15% in men. So women had higher prevalence of hypercholesterolemia as well as higher prevalence for untreated hypercholesterolemia than men. For the mean cholesterol level among adults with hypercholesterolemia, it was 269.8 milligram per DL. And accordingly, the mean was significantly higher among those with untreated hypercholesterolemia. And by sex, the mean was much higher among women with untreated hypercholesterolemia at an alarming level of 274 milligram per DL. And for the distribution of adults, so this is our study population, by cholesterol level and treatment status, still majority of adults had total cholesterol level of below 240 milligram per DL. They were not diagnosed with this condition and were not taking any lipid-lowering medication. While the untreated hypercholesterolemia, as presented previously, is this yellow bar. So there were very few adults who were taking statins at the time of the survey. For the prevalence of hypercholesterolemia by socioeconomic characteristics, let me first present the prevalence by place of residence and wealth quintile. So by place of residence among females, this is the pink bar. Higher prevalence of hypercholesterolemia is observed among women in urban areas at 23.9% than those living in rural areas. And among males, higher prevalence was also noted among males residing in rural areas. For wealth quintile, these are the categories for wealth index, which is a composite measure of a household's cumulative living standard. The prevalence was increasing with socioeconomic status. And this is shown to be more common among females. So specifically, in the highest or richest wealth quintile at 29.1%. Now for the untreated hypercholesterolemia, so I'd like to clarify here that we would not be comparing the rates between these two, the prevalence of hypercholesterolemia and untreated hypercholesterolemia, but we will still be presenting the prevalence for both. Because the more important information that we are sharing here is that majority of those with hypercholesterolemia were untreated. So we have here our evidence-based data on the rates as well as the magnitude for our targeted interventions. So we can observe here that the trends for untreated hypercholesterolemia, both by place of residence and wealth quintile, are the same. It was higher among adults living in the urban areas and those in the higher wealth quintiles. By employment status among females, the prevalence was very slightly higher among those who were employed at 22.6%. While among males, it was observed that the prevalence was slightly higher among those with no occupation at 16.9%. And then for the educational attainment, women who have reached elementary grades had higher prevalence at 25.2% and was actually significantly higher compared to those who have reached high school level of education at 20.7%. But among males, the prevalence of hypercholesterolemia increased, though in small increments with education. So males with college education or higher had the higher prevalence of hypercholesterolemia at 21.3%. So in general, it is observed that in both hypercholesterolemia and untreated, female adults had higher prevalence in all these categories for employment status and educational attainment. In terms of civil status, widows or women who lost their husband had significantly higher prevalence of hypercholesterolemia at 35.6% compared with other women's civil status. So this means that among this group, 1 out of 3 widows had hypercholesterolemia in 2013, while married men had higher prevalence at 18.6% compared with other categories. Actually, this rate is significantly higher compared to single men and those in a live-in relationship. So for untreated hypercholesterolemia, the rates presented in this slide had similar trend. For selected NCD risk factors, first, in terms of blood pressure, higher prevalence of hypercholesterolemia was observed in both females and males, starting with BP level categorized as hypertension stage 1. So this is systolic BP of 140 millimeters of mercury and above, or diastolic BP of 90 millimeters of mercury and above. So more than 1/3 of women with elevated BP had already hypercholesterolemia in 2013. Among adults with family history of hypercholesterolemia or those with immediate family members having high level of cholesterol, 1/4 of women in the study population had hypercholesterolemia, and among men, the prevalence was slightly lower at 19.7%. So the prevalence of hypercholesterolemia among those adults with family history were significantly higher compared to those without. And we also present here the prevalence or the rates for untreated hypercholesterolemia. For fasting blood glucose or fasting blood sugar, the prevalence of hypercholesterolemia was evidently high among those with high FBG, especially among women, where 46.6% of women with high FBG had hypercholesterolemia in 2013. And then by triglyceride level, the prevalence increased exponentially, especially among women. So here are the major risk factors that should be included or taken into consideration in the screening and risk assessment for hypercholesterolemia. Another set of risk factors linked with NCDs are overweight and obesity, as assessed by BMI, waist circumference, and waist hip ratio. For BMI, it was observed that a higher prevalence was recorded among adults who were overweight or obese, particularly for females that are overweight and among males that are either overweight or obese. So the prevalence was significantly higher among adults who were overweight or obese compared to those with normal BMI. In terms of waist circumference, the prevalence was significantly higher among adults with even borderline waist circumference measurement. And for high waist to hip ratio, the prevalence was slowly increasing from low to borderline to high WHR. But it is notable here that the prevalence of hypercholesterolemia among those with borderline and high WHR were higher among men compared to women. While in terms of untreated hypercholesterolemia, the same trend can be observed. Lastly, for the behavioral risk factors to NCDs, current smokers were shown to have lower prevalence of hypercholesterolemia in the study, particularly among males. So this is 14%. And the prevalence was slightly higher among women who were former smokers. So this is 24.8%. In terms of excessive alcohol intake or binge drinking, the prevalence was the same, essentially the same for men who were engaged in binge drinking. And then among women, it was slightly higher among those who were not engaged in binge drinking at 22.3%. For physical activity, prevalence of hypercholesterolemia was higher among men and women who were insufficiently physically active. It was actually significant among men. And then for fruits and vegetable consumption, prevalence of hypercholesterolemia was slightly higher among men who consumed less than 400 grams of fruits and vegetables per day, while it was the opposite for women. Although the differences were noted here, these were not statistically significant. For the untreated hypercholesterolemia, the prevalence or rates are also presented in this slide. So we analyzed our data set, and multivariable analysis were used to adjust for age, that is for Model 1, and then for Model 2, adjustments were made for age and history of diabetes or hypertension. So we need these adjustments to allow our study population to be compared or to permit unbiased comparison between groups when the age and disease profiles of the population are quite different. So who are at risk for having hypercholesterolemia, as well as untreated hypercholesterolemia? So let us start with the socioeconomic factors. So for both males and females, those who are in the lower wealth quintiles and residing in rural areas had lower risk of having hypercholesterolemia than those in the richest wealth quintile and those living in urban areas. For untreated hypercholesterolemia, so this is evident among women, that those in the poor and poorest wealth quintiles and those in rural areas had higher risk of having untreated hypercholesterolemia than their counterparts. For the educational attainment, those adults with no grade completed until high school had lower risk of having hypercholesterolemia, and similar results were noted among women. However, it should be noted that males that had high school level of education had more than twice higher risk of having untreated hypercholesterolemia. While for females with elementary education shows that there is almost twice higher risk of having untreated hypercholesterolemia than those with college level of education. For civil status, married men had higher risk of having hypercholesterolemia, while for the other variables, no significant associations were noted. So among males, as soon as his blood pressure increased from the normal level of less than 120 over less than 80 millimeters of mercury, the risk of a person in having hypercholesterolemia also increases. So these are the odds ratios. And the highest risk was noted among males with hypertension stage 1, or those with systolic BP of 140 to 159 and diastolic BP of 90 to 99. And then for the untreated hypercholesterolemia, there is no statistically significant association noted. For the female adults, higher BP also increases the risk of having hypercholesterolemia as well as for untreated hypercholesterolemia. In terms of family history, it was shown that those with history of hypercholesterolemia had higher risk of having this condition compared to those without history. This is for both men and women. On the other hand, this variable does not impose a higher risk for untreated cases. For fasting blood sugar, when the FBG level reached the impaired glucose level among males, so these odds ratio, the odds of having hypercholesterolemia was higher. And among women, this risk is evident among women with high FBG. While for untreated hypercholesterolemia, there is no significant association noted. For triglyceride level, just like in the previous risk factor, As the level rose above the desirable level, it imposes higher risk of having hypercholesterolemia among both males and females. For the untreated cases, the greatest odds of having untreated hypercholesterolemia was noted among adults with very high triglyceride level. For the indicators of obesity, high BMI, high WC, and high WHR impose higher risk of having hypercholesterolemia for both males and females. Okay. On the other hand, high BMI status and high waist circumference imposes lower risk of having untreated hypercholesterolemia. For WHR and untreated hypercholesterolemia, there is no significant association noted. So for the behavioral risk factors, among males, it was found that current smokers had higher risk of having hypercholesterolemia than those who never smoked. So it is already established that smoking is associated with a more atherogenic lipid profile. So even for former smokers among women, since there is a possibility that these non-smokers have higher BMI or body fat distribution, smoking cessation is known to be associated with substantial weight gain. So in addition, for insufficient physical activity, let's start with men. It was found that those physically inactive men have higher risk of having hypercholesterolemia. While for fruits and vegetable consumption, there was no clear relationship with hypercholesterolemia and untreated hypercholesterolemia. So in conclusion, the prevalence of hypercholesterolemia among the study population was 19.3%. And majority who had hypercholesterolemia in 2013 had no lipid lowering medication. Women had higher prevalence of hypercholesterolemia as well as higher risk of having untreated hypercholesterolemia than men. And among the variables studied, sex, particularly females, residing in urban areas, elevated BP, high fasting blood glucose, okay, family history of hypercholesterolemia, elevated levels of triglycerides, obesity, high waist circumference and high waist hip ratio, smoking, and physical inactivity, particularly among men, were significantly associated with hypercholesterolemia. Findings of this study also revealed that women in the lower wealth quintiles, as well as women from rural areas, were less likely to receive treatment for hypercholesterolemia. So for our recommendations, we need to integrate both high-risk and population strategies that focus on socioeconomic characteristics as well as risk factors for NCDs in the diagnosis, risk management, and treatment for hypercholesterolemia. We also recommend the institution of adequate and intensive screening, effective treatment, and lifestyle interventions for adults with higher risk of having hypercholesterolemia, especially in our primary care facilities. And we can adopt the use of the 2019 ASCVD Risk Estimator Plus to help our doctors and patients build a customized risk-lowering plan. So this is done by estimating and monitoring the change in a 10-year atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease risk. And lastly, we should also promote healthy diet like our Pinggang Pinoy and the nutritional guidelines for Filipinos, regular physical activity, and holistic healthier lifestyle modification treatment or therapy. So we should manage stress, we should sleep adequately, avoid alcoholic beverages, and do not smoke. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Patalen, for that very comprehensive lecture about hypercholesterolemia. So thank you so much for sharing the prevalence as well as the some significant factors associated with hypercholesterolemia. So it's really a high time, no, to address, no, hypercholesterolemia as a major risk factor to non-communicable diseases or NCDs. No, hopefully we can implement those suggested action-oriented solutions to address the issue. So, um, of course, thank you. Let us give her a virtual clap to Miss Patalen for that very informative lecture for us. So again, let me remind everybody to feel free to type in your questions, and this will be answered during the open forum. And also, I also remind to also include the name as well as your affiliation so that you will be acknowledged during the open forum. Okay. So for our third panelist, oh, before that, no, before I forget, let us acknowledge also the presence of Dr. Desiree Daniega, FNRI Ethics Committee Chair. Good morning, Mom. Thank you for joining us this morning. And also to our close to 900 participants in our Zoom and 200 to our YouTube viewers. Okay, so for our third panelist, let's all welcome Miss Glenda P. Azania. Over to you, Ma'am Azania.
Hello, everyone. This morning, I will be presenting an in-depth study entitled Is Household Food Insecurity Associated with Chronic Energy Deficiency Among Filipino Elderly? So these are my co-authors, Ms. Dasco, Mr. Patricio, Ms. Duante, and Dr. Agdempa. For the declaration of conflict of interest, the authors declare that they have no known competing financial interests or personal relationships that could have appeared to influence the work in this presentation. Since the study is related to food security, let me share with you some definitions. According to the World Food Summit in 1996, food security exists when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. On the other hand, food insecurity is defined as a situation that exists when people lack regular access to enough, safe, and nutritious food for normal growth and development and an active and healthy life. So we all know that recurrent food insecurity leads to hunger, and prolonged hunger results to malnutrition. The status of food security or insecurity in the household can contribute or worsen the existing health and nutrition situation of its members, particularly the vulnerable groups, including the elderly. The 2018 Expanded National Nutrition Survey reported that more than half of the Filipino households experience food insecurity, or 5 out of 10 households were food insecure. Literatures on food security among elderly are mostly from other countries such as Southeast Asia, Middle East, West Africa, South America, and the United States. In the Philippines, limited study was noted on food insecurity and elderly. Duante et al. In 2018 assessed the impact of climate change on health and nutrition among vulnerable groups in the Philippines, including the elderly. The study reported that Filipino elderly have an increased risk of chronic energy deficiency if they belong to the poorest quintile, large and food insecure households. So who are the elderly? In most developed countries, such as the United States, United Kingdom, and Canada, elderly is defined as individuals aged 65 years and over, and frequently referred to as older adults or older people. While in developing countries, particularly in Southeast Asia, like the Philippines, elderly is defined as individuals belonging to the age group 60 years old and above, and they are commonly known as older people or senior citizens. The elderly is characterized by these different physiological changes such as impairment in vision, taste and smell, auditory functions, decreased muscle strength, impairment of digestive system, and others. The 2015 Census of Population showed that of the 100,981,437 total Filipino population, 7.5% or 7.55 million were senior citizens, more than half of whom were females, married, and reached at least elementary level of education. Highest proportion of elderly was noted in the 60 to 64 years of age group at 36.6%. By definition of the Asian Health and Wellbeing Initiative, the country is considered as a young population wherein less than 7% is aged 65 years or older. However, according to Castillo in 2019, the Philippines is projected to have a transition to an aging population between 2025 to 2030. Population aging is a global phenomenon, and every country in the world is experiencing growth in both the size and the proportion of older persons in the population. To summarize, studies on food security focusing on Filipino elderly is very limited. The changing structure of the population in the Philippines and the increasing trend of older people calls for a study to examine their health and nutritional status in the context of household food security or insecurity. For the general objective, the study examined the association between nutritional status of the elderly and the household food insecurity status. Specifically, the study described social and demographic characteristics of the elderly, determined their health and nutritional status, determined differences in characteristics of elderly in food secure and food insecure households, and determined association of household food insecurity status with selected variables. For the methodology, the study utilized the secondary data from the 2018 ENNS, wherein a total of 17,069 or 8.9% were 60 years old and above, and a total of 4,664 elderly with complete information on selected indicators from the different survey components such as anthropometry, biochemical, dietary, clinical and health, socioeconomic, and food security were included in the study. For the food security component, the Household Food Insecurity Access Scale or the HFIAS questionnaire was adopted to determine the prevalence and magnitude of food insecurity at the household level. The questionnaire was composed of 9 occurrence questions and were asked based on the respondents' perception on food situations, resources, or supply during the previous month or past 30 days, followed by questions on how often the conditions were experienced by the households. So the data from the different survey components mentioned were organized, merged, and analyzed using the SPSS version 16 for Windows. Descriptive statistics was used to describe the profile of elderly, while chi-squared test was carried out to determine the similarities and differences between food secure and insecure elderly. Logistic regression analysis was employed to determine the association between food insecurity and selected variables or indicators. A p-value of 0.05 was considered significant for all the tests performed. For the results, this will be shown by objective, So let me start by describing the profile of the elderly. The mean age of Filipino elderly was 68 years old. Around 68% of the elderly belong to 60 to 69 years old group, and only 5.5% were aged 80 years and over. More than half of the elderly were females at 56.6%. By civil status, more than 50% were married and about 32% were widowed. By educational attainment, higher proportion of elderly at 49.2% had reached elementary level, followed by those who had secondary level at 30%, and only a few had no grade completed at 3.4%. By area of residence, about 60% of the elderly were living in rural areas. Almost all elderly had senior citizens card, and less than 10% belonged to indigenous peoples group. For the second objective, describing the health and nutritional status of elderly, results showed that chronic energy deficiency, or those with BMI less than 18.5, was present in 12.6% of the elderly and considered of medium public health significance. The proportion of elderly with CED was not significantly different between males and females. Overweight, or those with BMI of 25 to 29.9, was at 24.4%, and the proportion was significantly higher among female elderly at 28.2%. Obesity, or those with BMI of greater than or equal to 30, was at 6.2%, and the proportion was not significantly different between male and female elderly. Android type of obesity, those with high waist circumference and high waist hip ratio, was common among elderly in the Philippines, and the proportion of both high waist circumference and high waist hip ratio was significantly higher among female elderly. For the physiologic risk factors for non-communicable disease, results showed that about 14% of the elderly had high fasting blood sugar. By sex, the proportion was not significantly different between male and female elderly. Elevated blood pressure was observed in 4 out of 10 elderly, and by sex, the proportion of male elderly with raised blood pressure at 38% was slightly higher but not significantly different with female elderly at 36%. On behavioral risk indicators for non-communicable disease, current smoking, current drinking, and physical inactivity were also noted among the elderly. Current smokers are those who smoke during the survey, either on a daily basis, at least 1 cigarette a day, or on a regular or occasional basis. Current drinkers are those who consume 1 or more drinks of any type of alcohol in the year preceding the survey. Physical inactivity is defined as not meeting any of the different criteria, such as greater than or equal to 3 days of vigorous intensity activity of at least 20 minutes per day, or more than or equal to 5 days of moderate intensity activity or walking of at least 30 minutes per day. So results indicated that current smoking and current drinking were significantly higher among male elderly, and while physical inactivity was significantly higher among female elderly. Micronutrient deficiency was also noted among Filipino elderly. Anemia, or having a low hemoglobin level, was at 18% and considered of mild public health significance. It was interesting to note that the prevalence was higher among male elderly at 22.2% than female at 14.8%, though the difference was not significant. Iodine deficiency, or those with median urinary iodine concentration of less than 50 microgram per liter, was at 22.7%, with males and females having similar proportions at 22.5% and 22.8% respectively. Vitamin A deficiency, or those with serum retinol level of less than 20 microgram per deciliter, was only 0.9%. This rate is not considered as public health significance. By sex, the proportion was not significantly different between male and female elderly. On food consumption, of the top 10 commonly consumed food items, rice as a staple food in the country topped the list with 96.5% of the elderly consuming the food item. This was followed by cooking oil, 3-in-1 coffee, brown sugar, and instant coffee. Only green leafy vegetable, or in this case malunggay, was included in the list, while fruit was not commonly consumed. It was interesting to note that milk was included in the commonly consumed food items by elderly. On dietary intake, majority of elderly were not meeting the recommended energy and protein intakes. For energy, only 17.1% had adequate intake, while only 29.1% met the adequacy for protein. In terms of food security status of households where the elderly belong, almost the same proportion of elderly belong to food secure and food insecure households at 50.3% and 49.7% respectively. So from this point onwards, I will be presenting the differences observed among the elderly when they group into food secure and food insecure households in terms of socio-demographic characteristics, health, and nutritional status. By sex, the proportion of male and female elderly in food secure households was significantly different with food insecure households, such that the proportion of female elderly was significantly higher in food secure than food insecure households, while the proportion of male elderly was significantly lower in food secure households than their counterpart. By educational attainment, elderly in food secure households have better or higher educational attainment than their counterpart. In food secure households, 27% of the elderly had reached college level compared with only 7.5% in the food insecure households. Wealth status was also significantly different between food secure and insecure households. Food secure households have higher proportions of elderly belonging to the rich and richest quintiles at 27.2% and 35.9% respectively, compared with food insecure households at 12.9% and 6.5% respectively. The place of residence was also significantly different between the two groups, with the food insecure households having higher proportion of elderly residing in rural areas at 69.3% compared with food secure households at 50.4%. In terms of nutritional status, chronic energy deficiency, or CED, was significantly higher in food insecure households. CED was of low public health significance at 8.5% in food secure households compared with food insecure households at 16.8%, indicating medium public health significance. The prevalence of overweight elderly was significantly higher in food secure household at 28.8% than food insecure household at 19.9%. Likewise, obesity among elderly was also significantly higher in food secure households at 8.6% compared with the other group at 3.8%. Android type of obesity, such as high waist circumference and high waist hip ratio, were also significantly higher among elderly in food secure than food insecure households. On fasting blood sugar, the proportion of elderly with high FBS was significantly higher in food secure at 16.1% than food insecure households at 11%. On iodine deficiency, the proportion of iodine deficient elderly was significantly higher in food insecure households at 24.8% compared with the other group at 20.6%. On the dietary intake, elderly in food insecure households have significantly higher proportion who were not meeting the adequacy for dietary protein at 73.6% than elderly in food secure households at 68.2%. So on the association between food insecurity and selected variables or indicators, logistic regression showed that the odds of being food insecure in terms of socio-demographic characteristics was higher among elderly belonging in poor households with low educational attainment, particularly if the elderly reach only elementary and secondary levels of education, those living or residing in rural areas, and those who are male elderly. In terms of health and nutritional status, elderly were more likely to be food insecure if they are chronic energy deficient, they have inadequate intakes on protein, thiamine, and niacin, and if they are iodine deficient. Focusing on undernutrition among elderly, multiple logistic regression showed that CED or chronic energy deficiency was more likely to occur among elderly with inadequate energy and niacin intakes and do not have elevated blood pressure, while those belonging to middle and rich households were less likely to have CED. So due to aging, the functional abilities of the body to consume, utilize, and metabolize food are altered and sometimes impaired. So this study is limited with the data available in the Expanded National Nutrition Survey, and other health and functional impairment were not considered, which may contribute on the overall health and nutritional status among elderly. Even though food insecurity was not directly associated with chronic energy deficiency, other results of this study showed that the proportion of elderly with CED and iodine deficiency was significantly higher in food insecure households compared with food secure households. Moreover, those with CED and iodine deficiency were more likely to be food insecure. Thus, for the conclusion, food insecurity may aggravate the situation of elderly, particularly those with poor nutritional and micronutrient status. For the recommendations, there is a need to strengthen advocacy or promotion for backyard vegetable gardening to ensure household food security. There is also a need to enhance the health and nutrition programs for elderly to include regular monitoring of nutritional status and blood pressure measurements in local health centers, continuous provision of maintenance medicines. Also important is the provision of intervention for those with CED, and most importantly, there is a need for nutrition education, emphasizing the importance of increasing their food intake, particularly iodine-rich foods. So with that, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you to Ma'am Azania for that very timely lecture. So thank you, Ma'am, for your initiative to look at the several factors affecting the nutritional status of our seniors or our older adults. So to answer your question found on your title, is household insecurity associated with chronic energy deficiency among Filipino elderly? So Miss Asanya has excellently and outstandingly answered the question and actually presented scientific evidences through her talk. Thank you po, Ma'am Azanya. So can we give her, Ma'am Azania, a round of virtual applause? Okay. Now, so after hearing the presentation from our resource panelist, we are now going to proceed with the open forum. Okay, so we have now here some questions from the audience. But before we answer that, may we invite all the panelists to turn on your camera and join us in this open forum session of session 5. Right? Hello po. Welcome. Congratulations, Ma'am Miss Rodriguez, Miss Patalen, and Miss Azania. Right. Okay, let's start. For the first question. All right. So the first question is addressed to Miss Rodriguez. Okay, so the question is from Riza Abilgos Ramos of PhilRise. Okay, Mamayet. So Mamayet, what are the cereals and cereal products po which are the highest consumed beside rice and rice products?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Miss Ramos, for that question. For the specific cereals and cereal products which are most commonly consumed, we did not look into that specific cereals and cereals food products for the participants from NCR. But as reported in the 2013 National Nutrition Survey, excuse me, aside from rice, which is about 94% of the household are consuming, among the products are pandesal, crackers, noodles like bihon were reported to be the most common food items. For fish and meat and poultry, fresh fish like galunggong, bangus, tilapia, tulingan were the most commonly consumed food items. And for pork, and for poultry, pork and beef are reported to be the most commonly consumed food items.
Thank you so much, Mamayet, for that answer.
Okay.
So the second question is for Ma'am Patalen. Hello, Ma'am. Good morning. The question is from an anonymous participant pala. So the question is this, no? Please listen. Majority of the Filipinos tend to have themselves checked only when they feel like their conditions have worsened. How are we going to encourage them to have themselves regularly checked to make sure that their lipid profiles are under the accepted levels? Also, laboratory exams are costly, especially to those who are less fortunate. Are there any initiatives that focus on their needs when it comes to hypercholesterolemia, such as, for example, lab tests, medications, programs for that promote physical activity?
Okay, good morning, Sir Mark, and to all our participants, to all panelists, as well as to all our guests. I-repeat ko lang po yung na-mention ko rin kahapon sa ating technical session na non-communicable diseases are the silent killers po. So they usually, yung mga persons na suffering from NCDs ay asymptomatic sa simula. So nagpo-progress po yung ating NCD slowly at nakakaramdam tayo clinically ng mga symptoms or clinical manifestations towards the end part na of the disease process. So medyo parang malala na yung disease condition natin, kaya tayo nagsisik ng check-up, kaya tayo nagpapa blood chem, etc. So for example, meron tayong nahihilo tayo, hindi natin alam na tayo ay may elevated blood pressure na. So kapag tayo ay nakaramdam na ng mga ganong sintomas, saka pa lang po tayo pumupunta sa doctor. So, meron tayo ngayong bagong release na clinical practice guidelines on the management of dyslipidemia in the Philippines. So this is recently published in JAFES, where tinitignan po dito yung screening and treatment algorithm for the management of dyslipidemia. So we also look into the guidelines set by the ECC-AHA released in 2019. So as young as 20 years old po, so specifically the age group of 20 to 39 years old, we are recommending na for screening of traditional risk factors. So kasama po dito yung dyslipidemia, kung ikaw po ba ay engaged sa binge drinking or smoking, as well as other behavioral or biologic risk factors. So we need to intensify po talaga yung screening specifically at the primary level. So alam natin na these, for example, yung blood chem natin are very costly. So dapat makipagtulungan yung ating, let us say, yung local health or yung ating health programs po at the local level in order to augment yung mga needs natin for check-up. So hindi lang tayo nagpupunta sa, for example, sa health center pag may medical mission. We should go there, yung ating health-seeking behavior, mag-shift po tayo into a positive health-seeking behavior kung saan hindi tayo nagpapa-check up dahil meron tayong nararamdaman. Gusto nating magpa-check up because we really need to know kung ano yung ating disease condition so that we can manage properly the risk factors, including ito pong ating dyslipidemia. Thank you, Mr. Mark.
Thank you po, Ma'am Chona. Actually, Dr. Agdepa, FNRI Director, we seen, no, she was raising her hand. Is there anything po you want to add, Dr. Agdepa, or ask to the panelists?
Actually, no, wala. Actually,
Okay po.
supposed to be clap yun eh. Napindot ko yung raise hand, so sorry for that. But an addition to what Chona has said, actually, sabi nila, wala bang program na nag-i-implement, wala bang program na i-implement para doon sa speedy or early detection. I think DOH has all this kind of tests, no. Sabi nila it is costly, but if you go to a health facility that is a government facility, then you can get it at a lower cost than if you go to a private hospital. Salamat.
Thank you po, Dr. Agdepa. And okay po, thank you rin po, Ma'am Chona, for that answer. So the third question po is directed to Ma'am Azania. Hello, Ma'am. Good morning. So the question is from Dr. Desiree Daniega, our FEARS chair. So the data about FBS level in food secured and food insecure elderly, am I right that FBS level is higher among food secured? Okay, so next question is, have you looked into factors affecting this? Correct me if I am wrong, please. Thank you.
Hello, good morning po. Yes, you are right po, ma'am. Food secure, elderly in food secure households have higher level of FBS, of fasting blood sugar, compared with those elderly in food insecure households. And on the question on the factors affecting the high FBS, no, ma'am, I did not consider that because I only focus on undernutrition, specifically chronic energy deficiency among elderly in the Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Azania, for that answer. Also, going back to Ma'am Patalen, are you still, okay, one more question for Ma'am Patalen. This is from Dr. Chai of Philippine Pedia Society. The question goes, no, can you elucidate further on the type of employment women in urban areas had, which made them at risk for hypercholesterolemia? For example, managerial versus rank and file, office work versus manual labor. How for married men, would you say stress is also likely to be a factor for hypercholesterolemia? And finally, for widowed women, would you say depression and poor health seeking behavior could also be factors for their hypercholesterolemia po? Yun po. Thank you.
Good morning, Dr. Chai from the Philippine Pediatric Society. First, for the type of employment in women, we will look into our data files for the disaggregation of the type of occupation. So we follow the occupation classification from the PSA. So titignan po namin yung disaggregation sa versus yung versus kung sila ba ay managerial or rank and file, office work, or manual, doing the manual labor. So after checking our data file, we will send the results to you, Doc. And then for married men, would you say stress is also likely to be a factor of hypercholesterolemia? Well, actually po, Doc, di ba, in general, stress is a risk factor for non-communicable diseases. However, including depression and poor health-seeking behavior, hindi po namin ito na-collect or na-measure in our NNS, specifically sa 2013 NNS. So hopefully in the coming NNS sa 2023, ma-include din namin itong mga related factors like stress, kung sila ba ay depressed, kanilang sleep quality, etc. po. So thank you very much, Dr. Chai, for the question.
Okay, thank you po, Ma'am Chona Patalan. And can we have another question po to Ma'am Azania? This is from an anonymous participant po. So the question goes, do you have any suggestion based on the data gathered and other studies on how the health and well-being of elderly in the Philippines can be improved, if not be given importance by the government? Thank you.
Good morning. Actually, there are lots of policies for elderly in the Philippines, one of which is the Republic Act number 7876. This entitled an act establishing a senior citizen center in all cities and municipalities of the Philippines and appropriating funds thereof. And there is also a Republic Act number 9994 known as the Expanded Senior Citizens Act of 2013. This provides healthcare services for poor older persons, such as free medical services on government hospitals, discounted services on private hospitals and clinics, free vaccines, discounted medicines, and mandatory PhilHealth coverage. So as a suggestion, most of the policy on elderly caters only on queuing and discount privileges for the elderly. And what I'm suggesting is to include or to strengthen this our Republic Acts to also include the monitoring of health and nutritional status of elderly, particularly in local government units. So also to include most of the monitoring program in our in nutrition mostly include mostly focus on young children and pregnant women. So this time it is time for a program to be strengthened and to include also the monitoring of elderly in the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you po, Ma'am Azania. And also, there's also a question addressed to Ma'am Rodriguez, Miss Rodriguez, from an anonymous participant. So the question goes, does this mean that if you have the gene code RS49083, you will become obese overweight, though you lived a healthy lifestyle? Thank you po. Naka-mute po, ma'am. Sorry.
Okay, thank you for that question. If I have this RS 49083, it does not necessarily mean that I will become obese or overweight. The change in our gene does not, the effect of these changes might bring it might bring na magiging obese ka or overweight. Pwedeng maging good or bad effect ang magiging effect nito sa isang individual. Although you possess this gene, parang it depends on the individual kung ang magiging effect sa kanya, although mayroon siyang itong risk risk allele, pwedeng ang maging effect sa kanya ay good. Parang ma-maintain lang niya ang kanyang health status, or ang maging effect sa kanya ay magiging obese siya and overweight in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you po, Mama Yet, for that answer. So I think that is the only time we have for the question and answer portion of the session. So again, for those questions we were not able to accommodate this morning, you may approach our panelists offline, or they will approach you offline to answer your questions. All right? Thank you very much. So indeed, a very interesting discussion we have for this morning. So our panelists deserve some recognition. Pwede ba tayong another round of virtual clap po to our panelists, our dedicated and diligent science research specialists from DOST-FNRI. Okay, so and with that, let us proceed to the awarding of certificates to our panelists. Okay, let me read the citation. Republic of the Philippines, Department of Science and Technology, Food and Nutrition Research Institute, in cooperation with the Food and Nutrition Research Institute Employees Association Incorporated, present this certificate of appreciation to Ms. Marietta P. Rodriguez for sharing her invaluable time and knowledge as presenter of the paper titled Risk Score Predictors and Algorithms, a study on the single nucleotide polymorphisms and traits related to obesity among respondents of the 2013 National Nutrition Survey during the 47th FNRI Seminar Series Virtual Edition with theme Good Nutrition in the First 1,000 Days. Starting right is the right start. Given this 8th day of July 2001 at the Department of Science and Technology, Food and Nutrition Research Institute, signed by Ms. Charmaine A. Duante, overall chair of the 47th FNRI Seminar Series, Ms. Leah C. Dahay, president of FNRI Employees Association Incorporated, and Dr. Imelda Angeles Agdepa, FNRI director and scientist too. Congratulations po, Ma'am Rodriguez.
Thank you.
Okay. Same citation goes to Ms. Shona F. Patalen for sharing her invaluable time and knowledge as presenter of the paper titled Association Between Socioeconomic Status, Selected NCD Risk Factors, and the Prevalence and Treatment of Hypercholesterolemia among Filipino adults during the 47th FNRI Series Virtual Edition. Congratulations po, Ma'am Chona Patalen. Alright, so same certificate is awarded to Miss Glenda P. Azania for sharing her invaluable time and knowledge as presenter of the paper titled Is Household Food Insecurity Associated with Chronic Energy Deficiency Among Filipino Elderly during the 47th FNRI Seminar Series Virtual Edition. Okay, and with that, congratulations and job well done to our panelists. May we request our director, our deputy director, for a quick virtual photo opportunity. Morning po.
Mark, congratulations to...
Ay, thank you po.
Sino nag-click, Mark? Okay na?
Okay na? Okay na po. Okay. So that ends officially the technical session 5 on
Morning to
nutrition
all.
and aging. Good morning po.
Morning. Thank you.
Thank you po.
Congratulations.
Thank you po.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You, Sir Mark Pretzel,
Thank you
for
po.
moderating.
So we would like to thank everyone again. So 900 participants for this session, no? For participating, and we hope that you have learned a lot from today's session. So let me read a few reminders. Please answer the post test at the FSS website. So the post test link will serve as your logout for this technical session. Failure to answer the post test will mean that you did not log out for this technical session. For the post test, you will be asked to input an FSS technical session code, right? So the FSS technical session code for this session is shown on the screen. Okay. DAM 448. So failure to provide the correct code will mean that you did not answer the post test. Hence, you will not receive certificate for this session. Only registered participants will be given certificates for the 47th DOST-FNRI seminar series. Certificates will be available once you answer the post test and the evaluation form or the link. Also, on accomplishing the evaluation form, be reminded to complete the data on profession, PRC number, as well as the expiry date as a requirement for your CPD units. So we also look forward that you will stay with us until tomorrow, the last day of this week-long seminar series celebration, the 9th of July, as we continue to the closing ceremonies. No? And there's another session for tomorrow in the morning of the 47th FNRI seminar series. So this has been Mark Pretzel Piso Maraga, your moderator for technical session 5, nutrition and aging. Okay. Some announcements. The Philippine Association of Nutrition, okay, Incorporated cordially invites you to the PAN 2021 Annual Convention virtual platform with the theme Malnutrition, Tulong-Tulong Nating Labanan, First 1,000 Days, Sama-Sama Nating Tutukan. This coming July 22 to 23, 2001. So PAN Convention is an annual event hosted by the Philippine Association of Nutrition Incorporated to unite its members, student and provincial chapters, professional individuals, and multi-sectoral planners and implementors of the first 1,000 days programs and projects at the local and national levels. So PAN has also invited renowned individuals in the field of health and nutrition to discuss on topics regarding the nutrition problems or issues our country encounter today. So you may register now through this link shown on your screen and the QR code as well. So registration fee is at 200 pesos. Okay, so for questions or concerns, please feel free to message us or message the page of PAN via email at panconvention2021@gmail.com. See you there. Hashtag panconvention2021. Right? So we would also like to invite everyone, no, Okay, so the NAMD, or the National Nutrition Survey Group, is looking for experts, no, in nutrition and nursing. So we are inviting more trainees. For interested applicants, you may reach this email address found on the screen, namdtraining@gmail.com. And you can also email your CV, including the PRC, no, PRC ID, to nns.onlinetraining@gmail.com. And look for Miss Mabel N. Nueva Espana or Miss Wamina Belen Kyoge. And also the NAMD, or the National Nutrition Survey Group, is currently hiring medical technologists at the moment. So for applicants with medical technologies degree or with PRC licensed medical technologies, you may contact Miss Rosemary J. Dumag, Supervising Science Research Specialist of Service Laboratory Group, through Mr. Dan Email G. Florendo, Project Technical Assistant 4 of SLG Biochemical Laboratory. So you may send your CV as well as the scanned copy of PRC license card or board results to this email, fnrienns2018@gmail.com. Okay. Before we end this session, okay, the 47th DOST-FNRI Seminar Series would like to acknowledge our sponsors. Our gold sponsors: Nutridense Food Manufacturing Corporation, a leading food manufacturer of healthy, nutritious, and research-based food products distributed nationwide. And then, Swiss Pharma Research Laboratories Incorporated, a leading manufacturer of pharmaceutical products in the Philippines and a technology adopter of the enhanced Nutriban. For our silver sponsor, we would like to thank Maan's Bake Shop from Davao City, one of the newest licensees of the DOST-FNRI developed enhanced Nutriban technology. And for our bronze sponsors, thank you for the Department of Science and Technology, National Capital Region, DOST-NCR Regional Office, Mary Loy's Food Products and Merchandising from Tumawini, Isabela. So we'd also like to thank Waffle Time and Great Foods Concepts Incorporated in Iloilo City, and RCJ Trading and General Merchandise. Magandang umaga po. And for our other major sponsors, we are very grateful for our partners: the Philippine Association of Nutrition Incorporated, the First Analytical Services and Technical Cooperative or FAST Laboratories, Arteche Bread House from Eastern Samar, Ruben's Bake Shop from Catbalogan, Samar, JA Fruits and Vegetable Processing from San Mateo, Isabela, Science Savings and Loan Association Incorporated or SLI, Wellness Pro, and D. Hermanos Pizza from Tangob City, Misamis Occidental. Thank you very much to our sponsor for your continued support. Again, thank you all so much for your time. Have a nice day, and we all hope you safe day and morning. Thank you, and see you tomorrow for our last day of seminar series.
while the parents are working, while the stress is tough. Exercise, aim for healthy lifestyles, a daily dose of nutrition, a balanced meal with variation, around and to of exercise, aim for healthy lifestyle, live longer, happier, better with FNRI.
Halina kayo, kain na tayo ng brown rice. Masarap na mas masustansya pa kesa white rice. Vitamin at mineral, seksay pa rin, pampalusog ng katawan ng bata't matanda. Para sa ating lahat, ang brown rice. Calcium,
Papatibay ng buto para sa healthiness.
niacin sa panunaw na maayos, magnesium, taga-ayos ng katawan mo. Halina kayo, kain na tayo ng brown rice. Masarap na mas masustansya pa kesa white rice. Vitamin at mineral, seksay pa rin, pampalusog ng katawan ng bata't matanda. Para sa ating lahat, ang brown rice. Sagot sa malnutrition, iwas cancer, diabetes at sakit sa puso. Konting kain lang, mabubusog ka na. Halina, tulungan ang bayan. Halina, mag-brown rice na. Mag-brown rice na. Tinggang Pinoy. Tinggang Pinoy.
Alam mo na ba na may bagong gabay para sa lakas at kalusugan mo? Simple lang at madaling tanda. Ang tawag dito'y pinggang Pinoy. Gulay at prutas, 1/2 ng plato. Kanin o tinapay, 1/3 ng plato mo. Isda o karne, 1/6 ng plato mo. Ito na ang pinggang Pinoy. Sa modelong pinggan, sukat na sukat, bawat pangkat ng pagkain. Pagkaing balanse sa nakatatanda, kainan din sa bata.
Pinggang Pinoy.
Gulay at prutas, 1/2 ng plato.
Pinggang Pinoy.
Kanin o tinapay, 1/3 ng plato mo.
Pinggang Pinoy.
Isda o karne, 1/6 ng plato mo.
Pinggang Pinoy.
4 years and counting. With over 2.8 million website users. IFNRI is a trusted source of food, nutrition, health in the Philippines. Home to 6 components: ISS, iServe, iLearn, iBusiness, iPromote, and iAdmin. The harmonized information and communication technology hub of the Department of Science and Technology, Food and Nutrition Research Institute is now expanding to serve you better. IFNRI Reimagined. iTrain is a new addition to the group. Users can now enroll in face-to-face online or offline trainings and watch, learn, and enjoy nutrition videos anytime, anywhere, while earning continuing professional development credits with iTrain. We also upgraded the original components. Nutrition counseling is now online. We also have new nutrition tools to aid users count their calorie intake with the Healthy Eating and Lifestyle program online. Prepare and serve healthy meals by calculating energy and nutrient content, quantified recipe and food costs of your recipe or menu using the Menu Eval Plus. Download the latest National Nutrition Survey data using public files for free. Know if your area is on track of meeting their nutrition targets with eNutrition. Rate the food's characteristics using science-based assessment that is convenient, efficient, time-saving, and many more with enhanced sensory evaluation laboratory. Access 1,500 food items with photos and many more nutrition data using the Philippine food composition tables. Do you want to know how much Filipinos eat? Perform basic to complicated statistical analysis using the food consumption data of the National Nutrition Survey with the Food Consumption Data Dietary Exposure Assessment. Thinking of starting a business? Learn more about DOST-FNRI's products and technologies and become one of our adapters using the Electronic Technology Transfer Monitoring Map. Undernutrition is a persistent problem in the Philippines. Be part of the solution. Be part of the DOST package advocacy for the improvement of nutrition of young children. Need nutrient, biochemical, and microbiological analysis results? Avail our services and track your status using FNRI Service Laboratory Integrated Online System. IFNRI is also home to the first accredited Philippine food proficiency testing provider in the country. Learn more about this new service. Check out the FNRI Proficiency Testing Laboratory website. Locally available but internationally comparable reference materials. The improved FNRI reference material portal allows direct access on clients' purchase, from tracking their reference materials from designated courier to extending feedback to FNRI. Learn more about nutrition while having fun. Access the different modules of nutritionschool.ph. Play nutrition games with iLearn. New data, more features, available 24/7. Start exploring the new website. Visit i.fnri.dost.gov.ph.
The FNRI Service Laboratory is an ISO IEC 17025 accredited laboratory which is composed of 3 laboratories. It is the focal agency of the Department of Science and Technology for Nutrition Labeling and is recognized by the Philippine FDA for nutrition labeling and by BFAR for marine food products analysis. It is the only laboratory in the Philippines that is capable to analyze serum vitamin A and urinary iodine excretion. Initially mandated to conduct researches on biological parameters and support the laboratory needs of various in-house food research and development projects, FNRI-SL has continuously expanded and has offered its services also to the public. The chemical laboratory is equipped with instruments that allow proximate determination and physical chemical analysis of foods. Also, our laboratory is equipped with state-of-the-art modern instruments such as high-performance liquid chromatography, gas chromatography, atomic absorption spectrophotometer, graphite furnace equipped AAS, automatic analyzer, WYD iodine checker, and the UV-Vis spectrophotometer is currently used for developing methods and water quality assessment. In the biochemical laboratory, other modern instrumentation are being used in order to support the National Nutrition Survey, medical research institutions, LGUs, non-government and international organizations. Having continuously participated and showed satisfactory results in the quality assurance programs of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The Biochem Lab offers now a wide range of tests. Meanwhile, the Microbiological Lab is a food laboratory offering a range of tests covering spoilage, indicator and pathogenic microorganisms in food and water samples. The Microlab offers the following: Also, the Microlab conducts isolation and identification of pathogenic microorganisms in food that are of significance to public health. Recently, the laboratory has also started performing molecular pathogen detection in food and bacterial cultures. Using the technology of real-time polymerase chain reaction, detection of Salmonella and Vibrio has become more rapid and accurate. As we are committed to deliver high-quality and timely services, the laboratory is maintained by well-trained, experienced, and PRC-registered chemists and chemical technicians, medical technologists, and registered microbiologists on analysis of different samples. Aside from our commitment to maintain quality data generation, FNRI SL also holds trainings and continuous consultation to customers and stakeholders. In the future, the laboratory aims to expand its services by offering specialized tests to the public. In order to do this, we commit to continuously develop methods and train our laboratory staff for excellence and quality service.
In 2010, DOST-FNRI revolutionized its take on nutrition by incorporating genomics in its researches, investigating the relationship of anthropometric, biochemical, clinical, dietary, and health components to the genetic makeup of Filipinos. DOST-FNRI is looking into providing a more personalized approach of achieving optimum nutrition to every Filipino. Through nutritional genomics, we attempt to better understand how a single nucleotide, a single letter, can make a big difference in our way of living. And so, to support this endeavor, DOST-FNRI capitalized on establishing its molecular laboratory known as the Nutritional Genomics or the NuGen Lab. With its thrust of bringing science for the people, the NuGen Lab provides assessment of genes and genetic variants associated with micronutrient deficiencies and diet-related non-communicable diseases. The NuGen Lab is equipped with some of the state-of-the-art equipment in molecular biology, such as the automated nucleic acid extraction machine, bioinformatics, real-time and digital PCR systems, automated liquid handling system, micro-volume spectrophotometer system, and gel documentation system. With a complete workflow adhering to the highest standard of competency in laboratory testing, Nugen Lab is setting the mark in providing mole biotechniques with transparency, validity, and reliability. Whether you are an individual or a group of enthusiasts seeking answers in nutritional genomics, the Nugen Lab awaits you. Our proficient personnel works in close contact with our customers through customized analysis, provision of technical consultancy in nutritional genomics, and standardization or laboratory competency. To even serve you better, we are partnering with a leader in genomic testing for a higher throughput and faster turnaround time. Welcome to the new generation of nutrition. Welcome to the Nugen Lab.
In the food industry, ensuring the quality and safety of consumer products is always the priority. To meet this need, food manufacturers frequently rely on food testing laboratories to determine the nutritional content of food products and to examine its possible microbial and chemical contaminants to comply with regulatory requirements. Philippine regulatory bodies take the lead in ensuring that local laboratories have the capability to generate internationally acceptable analytical data. One of their bases in evaluating the competence of laboratory is the result of their continuous participation in proficiency testing scheme. Proficiency testing is an effective tool to determine the performance of a laboratory through an inter-laboratory comparison. DOST-FNRI, through its proficiency testing laboratory, provides affordable, accessible, and reliable PT programs to support testing laboratories in their ISO 17025 accreditation. From 2006 to date, PT rounds were organized based on international standard, which includes PT on physical-chemical analysis on different food matrices. These FNRI PT rounds were participated in by 20 to 70 local and foreign laboratories. Seminars, trainings, or workshops are also organized after every PT round where participating laboratories are provided with knowledge that may possibly help them to improve their laboratory performance. Currently, the Proficiency Testing Laboratory of the DOST-FNRI is the only ISO IEC 17043-2010 accredited proficiency testing provider in the Philippines, and is able to sustain and continuously expand its accreditation for 8 years. Aside from providing PT schemes, the laboratory also offers reference materials generated from PT rounds, which can be used for quality assurance purposes. Announcements on how to participate in the FNRI PT rounds, results of the current PT round, available reference material of the FNRI PTL, and their future plans are all made available in the IFNRI website. The Food and Nutrition Research Institute's Sensory Evaluation Laboratory primarily serves the sensory evaluation needs of FNRI in-house researchers. FNRI SEL assists food industries with their product to move up the value chain and attain global competitiveness through research, teaching or training, and consultancy service. The laboratory is designed following ISO requirement for sensory evaluation. It has a preparation room equipped with chiller and freezer, microwave oven, cooking range, utensils for food preparation and service, a conference room for group discussions, hand washing station, and 10 partitioned evaluation booths with computers, controlled lighting, noise, and temperature. One of FNRI SEL's best assets are the trained and experienced managers, sensory analysts, and sensory panelists. The laboratory employs internationally acceptable and validated test methods and computerized data collection through their customized eSEL software. FNRI SEL offers various services to help food industries with their product development. Consumer acceptability and preference test helps identify which flavor, smell, texture, and appearance is preferred. Descriptive and sensory profiling test includes development of language for product significant attributes and creates its sensory blueprint. Difference test is a procedure used for quality monitoring of in-between batch consistency or changes of product quality through time. Other services: seminars and trainings on sensory evaluation, panelist recruitment and training, consultation on experimental design, computerized data collection. The sensory facilities are used to educate students, entrepreneurs, technical staff of food industries, as well as managers and decision makers on the science of food acceptance. Knowledge on sensory evaluation helps identify which flavors, smell, texture, and appearance delivered to the highest consumer likings. How to avail the services. FNRI SEL plans to extend their sensory evaluation expertise to meet the needs of food-related and consumer products industries. Future endeavors for FNRI SEL, which will ensure consumer perception will be the heart of FNRI food innovation, are the following: infrastructure development to cater testing for appearance, odor, texture, taste, development of expert panels, computerization of data management system with application of sensometrics to extract information from large sensory data, and development of staff competency on fields of flavor science, human behavior, and statistics. The final judge of food quality is our customer. Understand customer insights and consider sensory evaluation as a tool to measure customer satisfaction. Thinking quality? Thinking sensory? Talk to us.
Ang awiting ito'y gabay sa Pilipino para sa gustong nutrisyon. Kalusugan natin dapat number 1. 10 tips lamang ang inyong tandaan. Number 1, kumain ng iba't ibang pagkain. 2, kay baby sa unang 6 months breastfeeding at mula 6 months angkop na pagkain. 3, araw-araw maggulay at prutas. 4, isda o karne at pagkain mayaman sa protina. 5, uminom ng gatas at kumain ng calcium-rich foods. 6, tubig at pagkain tiyaking malinis at ligtas. 7, gumamit ng iodized salt. 8, hinay lang sa maalat, mamantika, matamis. 9, i-maintain ang tamang timbang. 10, maging aktibo, araw-araw ehersisyo. Huwag manigarilyo, alak iwasan mo. Ito ang bagong gabay sa wastong nutrisyon. Ito ang bagong gabay sa wastong nutrisyon. Ito ang bagong gabay sa wastong nutrisyon.
para sa lakas at kalusugan mo. Simple lang at madaling tandaan. Ang tawag dito'y pinggang Pinoy. Gulay at prutas, 1/2 ng plato. Kanin o tinapay, 1/3 ng plato mo. Isda o karne, 1/6 ng plato mo. Ito na ang pinggang Pinoy. Sa modelong pinggan, sukat na sukat bawat pangkat ng pagkain. Pagkaing balanse sa nakatatanda, mainam din sa bata. Pinggang Pinoy. Gulay at prutas, 1/2 ng plato. Pinggang Pinoy. Kanin o tinapay, 1/3 ng plato mo. Pinggang Pinoy. Isda o karne, 1/6 ng plato mo. Pinggang Pinoy. Pinggang Pinoy.
Halina kayo, kain na tayo ng brown rice. Masarap na mas masustansya pa kesa white rice. Vitamina, mineral, seksik pa rin, pampalusog ng katawan ng bata't matanda. Para sa ating lahat, ang brown rice. Calcium,
Papatibay ng buto
thiamine,
para sa healthy nerves.
niacin sa palunaw na maayos, magnesium, taga-ayos ng katawan mo. Halina kayo, kain na tayo ng brown rice. Masarap na mas masustansya pa kesa white rice. Vitamina, mineral, seksik pa rin, pampalusog ng katawan ng bata't matanda. Para sa ating lahat, ang brown rice. Sagot sa malnutrition, iwas cancer, diabetes at sakit sa puso. Konting kain lang, mabubusog ka na. Halina, tulungan ang bayan. Halina, mag-brown rice na. Mag-brown rice na.
Everything today is faster. Everything today is easier. With technology getting better, it doesn't mean we're getting healthier. While the kids are young, while the parents are working, while the stress is tough, just remember the following. Go for a daily dose of nutrition. Go for a balanced meal with variation. Go for a run or two of exercise. Aim for healthy lifestyles. Inspire others to do the same. Story of life is no game. Life doesn't need to end that fast. If you choose health, the longer you last. Go for a daily dose of nutrition. Go for a